All right. All right. Welcome, Mr. Seamus. Thank you for joining my second episode here on One the Come Up, where we interview those that are currently on the come up, have made Forbes 30 under 30 because they're making their names known. They're becoming leaders of the world, and basically we go over your story here, starting from high school where I'm still currently at, and we go all the way to present day and a little bit into the future. So so yeah, that's where I wanted to take you back to your high school, if you don't mind, right there. So where are you from? Are you from
Born,
California? From
yep, born and raised in California, Bay Area. So that's where I'm currently sitting now, as a matter of fact.
so you moved back there. That's nice. And then you went to Boston College, correct?
That I did 3 years at BC, uh,
Nice,
and then came home.
nice. No, that's actually one of the colleges I'm looking to get into. I want to be near a city. It's a pretty good school, very good school, Boston College. So how'd you like it there? Did you like the campus? Was it how was your college experience?
I think one of the things that I found about BC that was maybe a little bit different from the pamphlets, everybody there is very intelligent, in that they're highly capable from a brain perspective, but they're very driven, largely. They're driven to perform at a high level. But I wouldn't necessarily say that the vast majority of students who are there are what I would call intellectually curious.
What do you mean
They're
by
there,
that?
they're there for a reason. They want to be a banker, they want to be a consultant, they want to be a doctor, and they're very good at following one of those paths to become that thing. So they're going to take the course, they're going to study the material, they're going to get the A, but they're not necessarily going to go home and start talking about, the intricacies of Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, right? They're not
Yeah,
do passion projects on the side because, you know, economics is really their passion. They're doing it to get a good resume, to get a good job, to have a good life. Versus when you go to some place like MIT, for example, or Caltech, you usually have people who are just driven by intellectual curiosity more. In that, like, yes, they want to be successful, and yes, they're very smart, but they're also doing these side hustles or side projects that really sort of drive them forward, into greater understanding of their subject matter. And growing up in the Bay Area, it's very much the way that Silicon Valley operates, right? You're doing things not just because they're getting you a financial return, generally speaking. In large part, you're doing them because you're interested in them, right? Like, you want to make this thing work from a computer perspective, or you believe you can change the world, or whatever. You think outside of the box. You're not necessarily following, I take this course, then that course, then this course, and I talk to this person and that person, and I get my job at Citibank, and then I stay at Citibank for 20 years and I make $1 million a year when I retire. That's not the path that you follow in the Bay Area, right? The Bay Area, you break things, you try to grow, you try to expand, you try to, revolutionize the world, right? That's kind of how it's in the water out here. Um, and so I enjoyed Boston College because I really enjoyed my professors. I enjoyed being in Boston. I enjoyed the fact that there were seasons. I enjoyed some of the people that I met, but I didn't always fit in on that campus, amongst the students themselves.
yeah, because that's very important. Like you said, you have to really love what you do, and that has to be really who you are. And it's not an Ivy League, Boston College, but it's still very good. So do you think that has kind of held you back anywhere, not being in an Ivy League? Do you think it's really important now to get into an Ivy League?
Um, well, I'll say two things. One is it is on Forbes magazine's list of new Ivies as of this year. Apparently, it's a
Oh,
very big deal. So Forbes magazine just released a list a couple months ago where they listed out all of the colleges that should be considered Ivies now, and Boston College made the list, which is kind of a cool thing. Um, That being said, I have never had anyone look at my resume and hire me or not hire me based off of where I went to college. And I have now hired well over three or 400 people now for my company. And I have never really given a crap about where somebody went to
Ivy
college.
Leagues.
Um, I don't even care if they went to college, frankly. It doesn't like it really has no relevance to it's not a good indicator on whether or not they're going to be successful or not at a company.
So
Um,
do you think it's still a good idea then to go to college? Do you think there's anything to be gained by it, or?
I think the piece of paper absolutely matters. And I think potentially you can learn some real skills depending on the discipline that you're in. And I also think, doctors need to go to college.
Yeah.
Their engineers need to go to college, computer scientists. Like you need to learn the stuff in order to be successful in a lot of those fields. But if you want to be in business, right, for example, what you're going to get a hell of a lot more education from is exposure to and time being around business people than you're going to learn in a business class generally, right? Like you don't need calculus to be good at business. You don't need any of these things. What you need is the ability to communicate with people. You need the ability to sell to those people. You need the have a high EQ so you can understand what they actually care about. These are all skills and talents. And then on the hard skill side, you need to better understand like accounting and how taxes work and how cash flow works and how like all of these other things that you don't necessarily need a college education to get to. I so when I was at Boston College, I got 2 degrees, 2 bachelor's degrees in 3 years. And I worked.
Wow.
Okay. So I had a full-time job and I got 2 degrees and I did it in 3 years. Um,
Wow.
had
Very
a
impressive.
3.3 GPA, 2.7 on my econ degree and the 3.7 on my history degree. And no one has ever given a crap about my GPAs either. So, my perspective is if you're going to go to college, make sure that you're filling up the rest of the time with something that's actually valuable to you and adding real skill. Particularly as we get into a new age of AI, which is fundamentally making it so that entry-level jobs are quickly going the wayside. Um, and it's going to be a lot harder for new grads to get jobs as AI becomes more and more prevalent.
Wow. So I guess another big thing in college is contacting, right? Making contacts, finding partners. Now, nowhere in my research of you did I find that when you initially started Carabiner, did you have a partner? So did you have a partner or
Nope,
no?
nope,
So
solo
because it's,
founder,
yeah, because that's how it was a little bit. Do you so did he have to do any funding as well, or was it
totally
no?
bootstrapped.
So that's a very interesting business model then that you had. So you would essentially, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you would go out to a company, you would, basically sell your expertise of Salesforce, correct?
That's right.
And you would implement it into their company, right?
Turns out there's a whole lot of businesses out there that buy software and don't really know what they're doing with it once they've bought it.
Wow.
And this is one of the things that I would say for anybody who wants to start a business. Uh, a lot of people look out there and they look at Sergey Brin or they look at Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos and they shoot for the thing that they want that they want to have change the world, right? Paradigm shifting companies. And like we need those people. We fundamentally need those people, don't get me wrong, and we need those companies. But the chances of success with those companies are very, very low, right? Like in the venture capital world, venture capitalists fund companies, they'll fund 100 companies. And the way the math all works out, they really only need and expect 1 out of 100 to be successful long term, right?
Wow.
Versus if you start a company that does something that already exists and you just serve another market or you do it slightly differently and it's already a $500 million market, you don't need to be that successful or that smart or that revolutionary to start getting share of that market to market share, right? And that was what I did, right? I didn't do anything totally revolutionary. I took a well-defined model of services, I re-put it together, and I said I delivered it in a new and unique way to an existing customer base. And as a result, we grew 400% year over year and we're able to scale really quickly.
Wow, that's very impressive. It's actually kind of funny because you're saying all this, and some of the information online about you is kind of out of date. So, you mentioned now that you have 300 employees, right?
I've hired
Or
over 300 people. We
you've
don't have
hired
300
over.
employees anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. And on Forbes, it said you have between 30 and 40, correct? That
Yeah, that's the number. Yeah.
That's correct. But recently you've been acquired. Am I correct with that?
Yep. No,
By
I sold the
SPI?
company. I sold the company 7 months ago.
Wow. So how was that? Because for a while there you were operating autonomously, independently. Do you function now within as a like as an extension almost, as an addition? Can you still have your own personality there?
Yeah, I think it's always a delicate balance whenever you go through a merger, right? So we're now getting access to different types of customers, different resources, different structures, and we have to adjust the company on both sides of the equation to match it, right? To match those personalities together and make sure that you don't lose the DNA of the company that has been purchased, but then you can also be successful at adding additional synergies through the 1 + 1 = 3 sort of thesis, right? Of
Yeah.
now we're able to have these things be successful, across the board. And so we can still have our personality, but it's very different now. I have a boss who I report to, and I don't control everything, through a benevolent dictatorship, right? It's a lot of decisions by committee and making sure that everyone's along for the ride. But that also adds, rigor to processes as well. So it's a trade-off. Not good, not bad, but trade-off.
Yeah. So
They
so
also,
you're
to be fair, when you sell a company, they usually give you a lot of money and stock, which is a good thing too.
yeah.
It's not just a trade-off of like you're giving something up. You're giving something up for a financial return, right? Which is a big part of why a lot of people build companies, right?
Some financial security there. So your growth has seemed pretty stable over these years. You started in 2020, correct?
I
And
did.
uh,
2020, yeah.
and in 2024, you're doing very well, and your growth has seemed pretty stable from what I could tell. Now, obviously, only have this very superficial, um, view of it all. But has there ever been a moment where you thought things wouldn't work out, or that you would have to completely scrap it, try something else, or
All the time. All
really?
the time. Danny, the premise behind growing a company is that whatever, all the research that you've done online is great, but you will never find the real story through that, right?
I'm
Because
starting to realize that.
you're never going to be able to find the secrets behind the closed doors. So, we grew, the story of Carabiner Group, we did just under 1 million in our first year. We did about 4.3 million in our second year. We're going into our third full year on the, meteoric rise up, right? And then the Silicon Valley Bank collapse happened back in March of 2023. And most of our customers were Series A and Series B startups. And so, with the Silicon Valley Bank collapse and then the ensuing drying up of venture capital funding, we lost about 50% of our customers in a 3-month period.
Wow, so they went bankrupt, your customers?
They went out of
Or
business. They broke their contracts with us. They decided not to pay their bills, right? Like everybody sort of went crazy. And they went crazy for about 6 months. And then after those 6 months, we were able to start sort of rebounding. But, along the way, man, like it was tough. It was really tough. All those 40 people that I had to, you know, uh, employ,
support?
right? Support. We had to go through layoffs. We had to do, reductions. We had to, struggle, take out debt, all of the above. And so there were some really, really challenging times throughout that whole thing. And even though it's ended well, right, having sold the company and gotten a great financial outcome, there were definitely dicey spots along the way, um, you know, for sure.
during that. So what allowed you guys to stay stable during that time? How come you guys didn't have to shut down, or what was your security there?
Um, there was no security, Danny. I mean, it was pure hard work, man. Like we were scrappy. We did everything we could to stay above the waterline. At times we were down to single digits, in the bank account, hoping that somebody paid us on time in order to make the next payroll. Um, it's definitely there were definitely some challenging times. I'd say one of the things that kept us competitive was that we traveled a lot. So we got in front of people a lot, and that allowed us to win business. So I would use my airline miles from the credit card points to pay for flights to go to a dinner in New York where I knew that customers would be. And then I would either fly the same day so I didn't have to pay for a hotel room, or I would stay at a flea bag motel for $80 a night, with
Wow.
dirty sheets and, whatever, in order to be able to afford to do that. Um,
Wow. So that's even, worse than when you just started out, even worse than when you were in college, Dan.
oh
So
yeah,
do you think that was so I talked to Mr. Klinsky yesterday, and he mentioned that college is a good time to start a company, right? Because you kind of have a little bit of a fallback there. And so I guess that offered you a lot of freedom then as well to start in college
yeah. I mean, I was in a unique position because I had a full-time job lined up, with
with
Deloitte,
sales.
um, with Deloitte Consulting, and so um, and so I had accepted that role December of 2019, and then the pandemic happened in March of 2020, and so they sent us all home for the pandemic. So the way the company started was that I had been sent home for the pandemic, and Deloitte had delayed my start date by 9 months, and so I wouldn't have started until January of 21. So I knew I had a guaranteed job waiting for me. I graduated in May of 2020, and I was bored out of my mind, right? Global pandemic, I couldn't leave the house. So I had 90K in student loan debt, and all I wanted to do was pay off the student loan debt. And so I was in a position where, it was a really unique opportunity for me to, you know, go out there and try to generate business. And the model that we came up with was pretty successful. And so we kind of had to make that call. But I'm in awe of the entrepreneurs who are, you know, out there at 30, 40, 50 with kids and families, you know, trying to build companies, because there is no way in hell that I would have done that, taken that leap, if I didn't have so little to lose as somebody fresh out of college.
So that's pretty amazing to think back that you were going to originally work for a company like Deloitte, right?
Yeah.
In one of those almost like those careers that we were talking about earlier. You were going to work there for 30 years, make $1 million. So did you know that I guess you didn't know that this is who you wanted to be, an entrepreneur, but you were
God,
kind
no,
of
I did.
forced that way.
I had no interest at all, Danny. I grew up here in the Bay Area where everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, and I wanted to be a banker, right? I wanted that
The black
set,
sheep.
work at Goldman Sachs, stay there for 30 years, 40 years, or whatever, and just cash the paycheck. Because I'd seen what startups can do to families, right? Like, one of the things about growing up in the Bay Area is that your Boy Scout leaders and your soccer coaches generally tend to be one of two different types of personas, or maybe three, right? One is they work for a tech company as an employee. Great. They make good money, really good money, and they can take care of their families, whatever. Number two is they're a successful startup founder, right? Or early startup executive. So, one of my Boy Scout leaders was one of the very, first employees at Apple back in the
Wow.
day, right? And you're like, okay, this guy is insane, right? Like,
Yeah.
holy smokes that you're, able to hang out with this person. But, they're the picture of what you would want it to be, right? Eventually. And then you have the third type, and the third type is the scary one. The third type is the serial entrepreneur. They're the ones who they've tried it. They've tried 5 or 6 different times, and they won't stop trying because it's what they love to do, but they've never made it either, right? They keep trying to be this thing, and the impact but they've never made any money from it. They've never had any success. They've never had any regular income, and the impact that can have on a family is really challenging, right? And so I never wanted that. I wanted a steady, good job. That's why I went to Boston College, because I thought that would get me what I wanted. And then lo and behold, I ended up on this different path instead.
Wow, that's amazing that how fate and how your path just took you there, and that was almost beyond your control. But
Yeah.
that you adapted as well, that you recognized that and you saw it, and you were like, I may not want to do it, but it's what has to be done here.
Well,
And
that's the funny part, right? I'm a planner by nature, right? I had my whole life's plan figured out, and then lo and behold, global pandemic happened, pretty big,
yeah, nobody saw
black
that
swan,
coming.
and the plan gets changed, right? And so I think one of the lessons that I've learned is that no matter how much you plan, sometimes you need to be able to, depart from the plan, when it makes sense.
Yeah. So I guess a little bit off topic here, but something that I guess has always interested me and has been brought up here a little bit. Well, not really brought up, but nature versus nurture. So you mentioned that you saw all those, there's 3 types of peoples, and that really influenced you. What do you think is more important in this world, nature versus nurture? It's just a really interesting, fascinating thing I find.
It's an excellent question. Um,
I guess it's very hard. It's kind of open, very open-ended there, but
well, it's very open, but here's what I will say. I think there is an answer to this question. Here's the answer. Fundamentally, the nature, you, you we were talking earlier before we started recording. Danny, why don't you tell the listeners what your goal is financially?
all right. My goal financially, I want to make $1 billion.
Okay, so you want to be a billionaire.
Yeah.
I believe that to eventually make $1 billion, you have to have something like inside of you from a nature perspective that's going to contribute to your success. I think
Yeah.
that some people will have that edge and some people won't have that edge, and that's something internal. Without it, I think you can get to 100 million. Okay. I think
Okay.
you can become very successful. Basically anybody can become very successful. The
Really?
difference,
Anybody?
the difference maker is the nurture element. Like to a certain point, you can be successful, and it has absolutely nothing to do with natural ability. It has everything to do with the ability to take advice, to learn, and to have good coaching and good support from those around you. But to truly change the world, to truly, be the Zuckerberg and the Gates and the Bezoses of the world, I think that's a nature thing.
That's a
I don't think
nature.
Elon Musk can just be created. I think
No.
have to have something internal on that to go and, frankly, do the things that are sometimes illogical.
Yeah, that's actually another thing I really find interesting is to read people's their early life on Wikipedia
Yep.
to see like all the thousands of different backgrounds that they come from, and to see that these celebrities, these CEOs, they all came from a different background, and that's how I also came to conclude that nature had to be the ultimate underlying factor of all their success.
But I want to be clear that
Yeah.
the nature doesn't matter if you don't have the nurture, right?
Okay.
Like there are plenty of people with nature where it's wasted or squandered because they don't have the right nurture, right? So, the classic example is if you were to have taken me and put me and had me raised by people who were artists or, you know, I don't know, poets or something like that, there's no world in which I would have been exposed to business in the way that I was, and that I would have learned the things that I have learned because I wouldn't have ever been around business. But my dad has run businesses since I was very, very small. He's in that world, and we talked about it and we learned about it together. And he would teach me things on my way to school. And right, like I got exposed to that, due to the mentorship or the CFO of the first investment bank I worked at. He taught me a whole bunch of stuff. Or my first clients, they would teach me things, right? Like, you know, the nurture element is a huge part of what takes the nature and forms it, allows it to reach that top of the top potential in particular fields.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. But I guess, do you like poetry? Because you haven't just mentioned that, and it was kind of random. Do you like poetry?
I have certainly liked certain pieces of poetry in the past. I
Okay,
was a
because
history major.
that's actually another thing that I was trying to do. I really like poetry as well, and I just started writing poetry a couple months ago, and I really got into it, and it's really developing into a passion. So that's another thing I was trying to do as well for colleges. Maybe get some poetry published, and so that's really interesting that you had mentioned that. Kind
Mhm.
of cool. It's like a dying art, though. Nobody really enjoys it anymore.
Well, I
Poetry.
think a lot of people enjoy it, but certainly maybe not at the younger ages, right?
No, nobody at school, knows who Percy Shelley is or John Milton, or it's kind of cool. So, I guess I don't really know the timeline of all technological advancements, but were you in high school before the iPhone, or was that coming out?
Well, I remember the launch of the iPhone, but I was not yet in high school. I would have
You
been
were in
in
middle school.
middle school. Yeah.
Okay, so wow, you're actually still pretty young. How old are you? I forgot the.
I turned 25 last month.
Wow. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Belated birthday. But you kind of don't seem like how do I say this? With 25, you seem very I guess experienced, a little bit wiser, but very precocious almost. But it's interesting. You see a lot of these kids now, and they're addicted to the phones and to social media. And with that whole nurture thing, it's I don't know. I don't want to say it's destroying them, but it's not doing them any good. And so, have you seen in your few years with the pandemic and everything and social media, have you seen like a change in the quality of employees that you're getting?
That is a hot button issue. Um, I think I think it has less to do with social media. So I didn't have social media growing up. My parents
Yeah.
were very smart and they said no social media for you. I didn't understand it at the time. I appreciate it because I spend a lot of time on social media today, and I probably would have started and sold another company if I wasn't on social media. But the I think it has a lot less social media is a distraction, but it can also help teach people things and you can help learn stuff through it. So I don't think it's all bad. I think it also helps us be more connected to one another if you use it in the right way. So I think it's not a terrible thing. What is more damaging to the quality of new team members is the lack of in-person working. So
Yeah, like remote working.
remote working is a really tough thing. So my whole company was remote. So I grew it, built it, started it, grew it, and in some instances never met the team members that I've worked with for 3, 5 years, at this
Wow,
point,
that's amazing.
in person, right? And it allowed me to hire people who lived in Brazil and Mexico and, you know, the United Kingdom and stuff, and never meet these people, and yet they were
So
able to
you're a
help
global
grow,
company out
you know,
of your room.
right
That's
out of my
hysterical.
childhood bedroom. Um, Now, the flip side to that is that young people in particular, right? People who have never worked in a job before you're supposed to learn from other people. Like that's how you're supposed to be able to learn this stuff to be successful. Is you're supposed to be able to sit right next to them and hear what they're doing and see what they're doing and be mentored by them. Try to do it yourself, and then they watch you and listen to you and help you, right? Like it's this is this feedback loop, particularly for the first, I would say, 3 to 5 years of someone's career. And now we're expecting for kids to do that without having that physical proximity. And I think that's really, really challenging. I don't think we're going to see it work. I think for young people in particular, offices are going to be the thing that actually makes them worthwhile, particularly as we see again this AI thing, the technology advancements continue to happen and make it so that you don't just need order takers, you need people with critical thinking and who can really problem solve. So I think we're entering into a weird phase now where most of the companies have tried the remote thing and recognize that for all of its benefits, you need to bring people back into the office to be truly successful long term.
Yeah, that's very interesting, this whole remote thing. And it's what Elon Musk is trying to. I'm not getting political here, but it's what he's trying to do with the government mandate that 5-day work week. And so how about your company? Is it fully remote, your company, or do you make
Fully,
people?
it's fully remote.
Okay, so that's interesting then that you don't do that either. But
No, despite everything that I just said, right?
yeah,
But we don't have very many junior employees, right?
okay, so you have
Uh,
seniors already.
Yeah. And so they've already had that experience in an office. They've learned the skill sets and now they don't need to be in person anymore. Right. And I do think that that's a thing too, right? Like I don't think it's a permanent that you need to be in the office all the time, but particularly in those early years, I think it's really, really valuable.
To be in the office.
Yeah,
So are you still like, do you still have people from all over the world working for
we
you?
do. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Brazil, Mexico, France, the United Kingdom.
Okay, that's very cool. And they bring different perspectives and they really help the company there. Um, so I guess I'm kind of out of questions here, but I guess for the future, um, you can never have predicted this, and I guess you really can't predict the futures. But how do you, I guess it's a stupid question, but how do you see yourself a little bit in the future, a couple years? Still working?
I think I'll still be working. I think there's plenty of ways to continue to make the world better, and to continue to sort of evolve as you know you grow and I think it's a really exciting time too, right? The advancements are changing ever so rapidly, and so I think it's a really exciting time. There's plenty of opportunity for people to be successful across the board, um, as workers, and I want to continue to sort of help that process move along. Do I know what it's going to be yet? Nope.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine that this will be my last company.
Oh, so you want to start more companies?
Very likely. Once you've started a company, once
You're
you're
addicted. You're hooked.
you're
You're an
you're you're
entrepreneur
very yeah
now.
you're very likely going to do it again.
Serial entrepreneur,
Yeah,
but a successful one.
hopefully. You're only a successful serial entrepreneur after you do your second. So there's still time. There's still time to screw that one up too.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Seamus. Thank you for coming on to the podcast, our second episode. Um, Best of luck. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Stop recording.